How's it going, everyone? And welcome to the Bot Podcast, where we interview movers, shakers, and innovators and talk all things conversational user interfaces. I'm your host, Chad Oda, and today we're very fortunate to have Michael Fertik, the founder and executive chairman of Reputation.com, as well as the managing partner at Heroic VC, where he has a specific interest in conversational-based companies. Michael is a serial entrepreneur who has helped pioneer the field of online reputation management and is also a digital privacy thought leader, best-selling author, and a member of the World Economic Forum's Council on the Future of the Internet. Michael also recently keynoted the investor panel at the Chatbot Summit in Tel Aviv. At that, Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chad. It's awesome. I think your podcast is terrific.
Thank you so much. So before we get started, I always like to ask a rather unique question based on our guest background.
No!
So most people probably don't know this, but you actually founded Reputation.com in Kentucky during your federal clerkship with the Chief Justice. So what was like a lesson you learned from that time that has sort of always stuck with you through all your companies and all the stuff that you do in Silicon Valley?
In fact, it wasn't the first company I started, but it is still a good question. I, unlike many, though not all, Silicon Valley and Seattle-based and other technology entrepreneurs around the world, Israel, I went to law school, and I am certainly influenced by the legal experience, whether for the chief judge or from law school broadly. And I now teach at the Harvard Law School. I've been teaching there for 4 years, courses in privacy and entrepreneurship and so forth. And I do think that one of the things, and we all have our own quiver of arrows. One of the arrows in the quiver that I bring to bear on a problem is some kind of legal analysis, which is to say, not every problem, but many problems do admit of or allow for some kind of legal element in whether it's privacy, which of course is now a big regulatory issue, or online reputation, which is kind of a question of speech, or conversational AI, meaning who owns what kind of data from your voice and who owns the payment flow that's going to happen and so forth. And the liability associated with the environments in which we use voice commerce and so forth, and conversational and dialogue-based systems, as well as the interesting sort of far-reaching implications of AI and machines that might start to talk back to us in ways that we cannot anticipate. Those are things that I end up thinking about perhaps a little bit more than your average investor or entrepreneur. Though everybody brings their own, quiver arrows to bear, and I don't think you have to have gone to law school to have those thoughts. You might benefit from it, but you don't have to have gone to law school to have those thoughts.
Sure, no, I think that was a great answer, because I think, to your point, more pressing than ever, GDPR and all this stuff about privacy, and, it's a hot topic right now, so very prudent.
Totally.
So rolling into things here, how did you initially get started or involved in the chatbot and voice space? Like, what was the interest there? Because you sort of jumped from Reputation to, chatbots and voice.
Well, I have had an interest in various technologies for a while, and one of the small number of transformational technologies that is now upon us is, I believe, dialogue and voice. And I believe that chatbots that are text-based are exciting, but that chatbots or interfaces that are voice-based are transformative. I think they are transformational and more consequential than text-based chatbotting, which is also very interesting, but not as fundamental a shift. In the same way that the emerging world interacted with mobile infrastructure and engaged with mobile infrastructure in a way that leapfrogged wire-based infrastructure that was the step. So in the West, or in the developed world, let's say, there was wire-based infrastructure, then we kind of got going with wireless infrastructure. In the same way that the emerging world actually leapfrogged that wire-based infrastructure phase and went straight to wireless, I think that so many systems, parts of the economy, can leapfrog the visual interface, the touch-based interface, and go to either multimodal interfaces and or to voice-only interfaces. And I do think there is great excitement to be had in both. And as an investor, as an entrepreneur, I do see a through line to the work that I think I do, I think of myself as doing, which is looking for technologies that can truly leapfrog and totally disrupt in that way, the prior embedded set of technologies. So look, we've had a very interesting set of first few years in chatbots and in voice commerce. There was a lot of hype. We're in the middle of a kind of part of that hype cycle. There is a great level of disappointment. You've seen me say several times that it's noteworthy that however much money has been spent on chatbots and so forth, there are very few people who can put up their hands and say they've had a terrific dialogue with a computer for more than a couple of turns. Hey, Alexa, what's the weather today is something I ask a lot, but that doesn't mean that I'm having a satisfactory conversation yet with the computer. And yet I think we're very close. And I think that the number of great minds and the number of very entrepreneurial people, many of whom you've interviewed and have collected in your audience, are working on this problem. And I think we're also getting sharper about how to define the problem. What are the applications for voice only? What are the applications for text only? What are the applications for multimodal, including visual, digital, and finger-based digital interactions? And we're getting sharper about that. We're also getting sharper about what the interesting challenge is. Is the interesting challenge a challenge of having any dialogue at all? Or is the interesting challenge a challenge of having user-initiated versus computer-initiated dialogue? So it's not overly difficult right now for a computer to ask you 25 questions that you say yes or no to
Sure.
get the result. But of course, oftentimes, not always probably, but oftentimes the question that is being answered after a 20 question Q&A is probably better answered with a one-line text. And so it's not really clear you get that much more benefit from the voice. So we're all looking for ultimately, I think, that natural conversation, that real true north of natural conversation. And I feel like we are on that exciting moment, that gene discovery moment when it's about to explode. It's about to give rise to an enormous unlocking of wealth and creativity, and wealth of creativity that we haven't yet had. And so I wanted to be skating to where the puck was going to be, much the same way that I think you want to be skating to where the puck is going to be. And I think we're all sort of trying to get ready for the moment when this becomes truly technically universal, so that we can be there to be having a strong influence on this or that application. Health, in automotive, in commerce, in e-commerce, in retail, in banking, in FinServes, FinTech. All of these fields will be redone with the advent of natural language conversation.
Absolutely. Great answer. And, I think something interesting that you said was, people just want to have that seamlessness of like a conversation, the same way they talk to their agent or the same way they talk to their friend. If we can facilitate that. And, I think to your point, you were saying a lot of these sort of question and answer type of conversations are better suited maybe on a website, right? If we can't get to that conversation base yet. But I think conversation is one part. I want to get your thought. I think the other part too is I was talking to Rachel Badish from Conversation One a couple of days ago. And she made a great point. She said, when the internet came about, we had this huge overabundance of data, right? And almost what conversational based interfaces can help do is sort of abstract out a lot of the complexities and a lot of the data that we don't need. So we can sort of ask the questions we want and get exactly what we want. So do you feel as though there's sort of interacting components there, not just sort of the seamlessness of I can talk to Alexa?
It's a very important point, I think, that she was getting at, and I don't understand it, of course, the way you do and she does, but I do think there's a journey we're all on towards a one-to-one relationship between what we want and what is provided, and there is, of course, a connection between the traditional data lake and the data edge, and so. I might say it a little differently, which is to say the pools of data, the data lakes that are being built, are producing more and more individualized and individualizable results. And the computing and the decentralization of either what the block or anything else that is happening on the edge is also allowing us to store information that is pertinent to ourselves, not to anyone else, and create some sort of set of preferences that are exposed at a minimum necessary basis to third parties. To me, the connection between those concepts and voice, there are many connections between those concepts and voice, but even with notwithstanding that, we spend so much of our day in dialogue in our natural lives. And so if we just step back and say at 10,000 feet, how would we best get this or that result? We can acknowledge that the fingers are still the best for certain things and the eyeball is still the best for certain things, but that a present listening and responding tool will be best for many things. I believe, by the way, that multimodal / voice-enabled commerce or voice-enabled technology will be very powerful also in the enterprise. So it's not just about individuals, it's about also the enterprise. So imagine that you and I could right now on this shared screen, maybe with some of your viewers who would join us, could collaborate on a Google Sheet or a Microsoft Excel document. And we could start to point to different cells and copy numbers and use our voice to say, hey, take cell F7 and move it down to L11. And let's have the same treatment for 2018 as we did for 2017 in our model. And then the computer could respond, or the computer could just hear us talking about it and start to propose different drafts of scenarios in real time, reacting to our collaboration. I have to say, one of the ways that we collaborate the most through voice is at work, right? Yeah. And there's no reason to believe that these things shouldn't also appear as really helpful tools for us at work. And so, and I'm not just talking about like the scribe that's taking notes in the background digitally. I mean, actually interacting with us and facilitating a conversation whereby we are collaborating on PowerPoint slides or documents together and spreadsheets together and understanding better our conversation with the computer because the computer is listening to us and responding very well. And so for me, there are so many opportunities here, and there's so many smart people working on them. Clearly, one of the biggest is in day-to-day commerce, right? I mean, I think one of the biggest opportunities that we can conceive of is in commute commerce, which is to say, one of the great untapped pools of value in American life, to begin with, is the commute, right? I think there are hundreds of billions of hours sort of enjoyed, but largely wasted and sort of miserable in the car or in the transport every day over the course of a year in America. And I don't know why you wouldn't prefer to order your groceries while you're in the car by voice on the way home to listening to yet another top 40 station for yet another 10 minutes. Well, maybe that is your relaxed time, but maybe you could also get more relaxed time at home with your family by taking care of the grocery thing while you're in the car, and safely because you're talking, you're not texting or talking, using your phone manually. I don't know why you couldn't check on your bank balance and pay some bills, or just, hey, what outstanding invoices are there, maybe for your small business or for yourself. I don't know why you can't make sure that calendars are syncing, among your family, and making sure that so-and-so's grabbed the kid on the way home, and getting all these kinds of, verifications and life notices that are better for you through voice, or just as doable through voice. We cope with our commute. Commute is one of the more deprecated, disfavored moments in the day for the vast majority of Americans. They self-report as being pretty miserable during the commute. And what if we could make you feel more empowered during the commute and give you more free time later? What if you could tell all your home appliances to turn on, and while you're on the way, remind them to turn on while you're on the way home, and remind all your devices at home, your IoT at home, to start cooking dinner, or start, washing the laundry, or even one day folding the laundry, and so forth. You talk to your home butler device on the way home. So all these things I think are very, very feasible. And what if you could ask your kids' set of drawers at home to prepare the clothing for tomorrow, so you don't have to think about what your kids are going to wear tomorrow. Once you get home, it's already done for you. It's already prepared in the drawer for tomorrow. These are all things that could make our lives so much easier and better. And I do think that some of them are ready today. Some of them are not. Like your drawers aren't going to do anything for you yet. But there's no reason you can't interact with your bank on the way home. There's no reason you can't order pizza on the way home. So I think that's ready today, and I think it'll make our lives better.
So rapidly approaching the movie Her, essentially, right? Eventually, maybe in the next couple of years, but we'll see. So, you're a polarizing guy, and I remember from Chatbot Summit, I think you had mentioned it. I think the title was "Everything Sucks Right Now." Is that your same sentiment? 3-4 months down the line, here we are. Is that the same sentiment that you still hold?
I think the title of my talk was "Everything Sucks So Far," but soon it's going to get better.
Right.
Look, I very much consider myself an optimist. I mean, you'd have to be an optimist to be in Silicon Valley and to do the job that you do, the job that I do, the job that most of your listeners probably do. Look, I don't think that we've had many great chatbot experiences yet. And the experiment that we ran, and you were there with me right there in Tel Aviv, in Israel, in the fall of 2017. And we ran an experiment. It was about 1,000 people in the room. I don't remember. It was many people in the room. And I asked the audience at the keynote, I said, I'm giving the keynote of the chatbot. I said, how many of you have ever had a terrific experience that you love with a chatbot, even one time? And there was one guy in the back.
Yep.
He raised his hand, and we sort of had a joke about it. But here's a room of enthusiasts who are living and breathing chatbot things, and not a single one of them, apart from one guy, could say that he or she had had a terrific experience. But by the way, I think it's about to get better, and I see every day evidence that it's getting better. And it's because the buyers are getting smarter, because the users are getting sharper, because the producers of bots, makers of bots, are getting sharper and better, because the data sets are getting richer, because companies are generally trending towards, at least at this current moment, a kind of higher level of collaboration. It's also partly because there's still a little bit of, I think, a rapidly diminishing return, but there's a bespoke, custom-built chatbot project. You've heard me talk about this before, Chad. So certain companies are investing very heavily in very bespoke or custom chatbots, and that's creating some more satisfactory experiences. But I think we'll see a diminishing return on that, and the breakthrough is going to come from the companies and individuals and so forth, researchers, who are going to make those solutions extensible in a non-customized way, in a more generalizable way. And I think we're right on the brink. I think we're right on the brink, and I see it all the time. I've been tracking chatbot companies for a couple of years, let's say, maybe more than that. And the companies I'm encountering in this current cohort and crop are more impressive than the prior one, and they're more impressive than the prior one. And no doubt, some of the individuals running those companies, or starting the companies, or leaving certain companies and starting new ones, are very impressive. But look, have you seen Jibo?
Yeah, I've seen Jibo.
Yeah, and were you deeply impressed with Jibo?
Absolutely not, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I think there was a lot of money spent on Jibo with a lot of brilliant people, and maybe with more time, more science, they would have. But the Jibo of today I would imagine, be a lot better than the Jibo that we got in the mail. And so, by the way, I don't mean to pick on them in particular. I think there are high hopes, and many of us share those high hopes. But I don't think anyone would say, well, I don't know if anyone would say that was a resounding success as a product yet. But it doesn't mean the people there who built that were not onto something. It doesn't mean the people who found it were onto something. And then tomorrow, or today, the Jibo of tomorrow today, even if built by the same gang, I think would be that much better. So I'm enthusiastically optimistic, Chad, about this moment. And by the way, as an investor, while the world starts to look away from voice commerce, and the world starts to look away from chatbots, which is not a universal trend, but it's certainly a trend more this year than it was 2 years ago, I would say, or 18 months ago. I think the opportunity for investors and entrepreneurs becomes sharper, because as the conventional wisdom goes from hype to, oh, that's not working now, then the less good move is to flee the space, and the better move is to go more deep in a conscientious way, because as the breakthroughs are happening, you're there to catch that rain as it falls. The lights in my office just went off, and the robot that controls the lights. So I'm going to have to go wave my arms. Excuse me.
Yeah, no worries. You need to get the sort of voice activated lights, right? You got to connect Alexa to it, right?
I should connect Alexa to my lights. You're right.
Oh, nice. So, do you mind elaborating a little bit in regards to, what specific components you are seeing companies and voice or chatbots actually doing better at, in the last several months, that you think is a significant catalyst to getting to, this moment I think we have in our heads about, whether you call it, duplex or some sort of real conversation,
So, look, so natural language understanding, I think, is getting better all the time. Obviously, ASR is improving constantly. By the way, also there's a substrate here. Users are getting better. They're learning how to sort of talk to machines a little bit better too, which is cool. I think natural language generation is getting better. I think some of the schemas that people are using are improving. These are all in the category of, let's say, building blocks. Putting them together is also getting better. So you're getting better collaboration between what I would say is your kind of chief scientist type and your chief architect type. Inevitably, and I've seen this in other categories too, they don't speak the same language, the chief scientist type and the chief architect type, or engineer-in-chief type. And the first draft of companies in the space were perhaps inevitably, many of them, and there's nothing wrong with this, but typical in the first draft, were basically collections of scientists. They were kind of pseudo-academic institutions, a whole bunch of PhDs who left together when they worked for the advisor, and the professor kind of assembled them, and now they're a company, and they got bought or didn't. And the next set were kind of some marketing types, and then the next set was, well, now let's start to combine some of the marketing types and some of the engineering types, scientist types with some engineering types. And I've seen, even as some of the companies I've seen up close have evolved, I've seen the academic types and the engineers figure out how to talk to one another and collaborate on dialogue flow structure, for example. That's already a very good example of how they might, from an engineering and architecture perspective and computer science perspective and speech science, computer science perspective, speak at cross purposes accidentally until they actually learn each other's vocabularies. And there are exciting breakthroughs, I think, that become available when very smart people from disparate and diverse backgrounds of training and thought process come together and start to speak the same language so that they can collaborate more effectively. They sort of start with the Tower of Babel and then learn all one language, and not to push the metaphor too far. So I think a lot of the stuff that I've seen lately is what I would call in the building block zone. I don't think that the breakthroughs yet are in the thematic scope. I do think there's great investment happening in certain areas like food, and of course the biggest area of investment so far has been in customer service, and I just think it's lame. I do. I think you made a point. Basically, is a web-based FAQ better than a phone-based, voice-based FAQ, and probably often is. Just natural language understanding is so much better than it probably always will be, or largely always will be. I've never really seen any customer service type solution that gets you better than a 15% discount on your customer service time, and that might continue per year. So you might end up with 50% discount sometimes. But yeah, I mean, automated AI-based FAQs aren't that great, frankly. And so attaching voice to that doesn't necessarily make our lives that much better. And I do think there is an opportunity for companies to be more bold, and the technology is getting to a place where it can enable that. So I expect voice to be part of our lives in transportation, in entertainment, in e-commerce, in consumption of all kinds, as well as in the enterprise. I expect it will be there.
Cool. No, I absolutely agree with you. I think it's just like this sort of iterative process. And you touched on something, natural language generation. I think we've seen a lot of like these tech demos with natural language generation. We saw, Microsoft's Tay, which was a sort of catastrophic event that occurred with them. Have you seen any like commercially viable natural language generation solutions right now? I can't say I have seen any, to be honest.
Look, I think we're on the brink. I think we're on the brink, and so we're on the brink. So I have a new car recently. I got a new car, and I have well, everyone knows that you shouldn't be texting while you're driving, and the new car has a speech to text and text to speech interface where I plug in my phone with mini USB or whatever it is. And it tells me I've got a new text, and it says, "Do you want to hear your new text?" And I say yes, and then it says, and then the text is often "Hi," and that's it. And then you said, "Does you want to respond?" I say yes, and the machine says, "Bing," and I say, "Hi, nice to hear from you." Period. And then it says, "Okay, you said hi, nice to hear from you," because there was an error. "Do you want to send?" "No." "Okay, you want to do it again?" Or something like that. "Yes," and then I do it again. And so it's like this 3-minute dialogue to get like "hi" back. And I can feel like probably everyone else feels, or sometimes it's very useful and sometimes it's a little bit too much work for the value gained. But at the same time, I feel like we're on the brink. That's going to get a lot more casual. It's going to get a lot more natural. And I think I could end up being hugely more productive in my car ride.
Yeah.
How much more productive do you feel ever since Bluetooth allowed you to start making calls from your car in a truly hands-free way?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I don't even think about it anymore. It's just like I take a bunch of calls in my car. Same with you, I'm sure. So I think you're right. I think we're on the brink, and it's like once we reach that brink,
car time.
Yeah, it's going to be like electricity. We're just going to walk into a room and be like, okay, well, it's here, right?
I totally agree. You could see you walk in a room and say, "Hey, where did I leave my keys?" And then the house tells you, "Well, your keys are on your couch." And so, look, a lot of has to happen for that sort of vignette to be true. But
Sure.
but we can imagine that as that happens, you're not going to look at your phone and look up through your phone where the RFID tag on your keys is in your house. It'll just happen in the ambient space, and part of the ambient space is voice. So look, I'm very bullish. I'm very, very bullish. And I see also large companies starting to invest in a very serious and real way, in the same way they started to invest in self-driving or AI or other large themes. I see large scale enterprises, new and old, starting to invest in this very, very real way. And I think they should be. So I'm very bullish.
Cool. Well, speaking of that, what do you look for when you're investing into these, voice or chatbot companies? Like, what do you care about today, right now? And what is sort of interest to you when you're looking at these companies?
I look for very special technical founders of a certain stripe. So there are very terrific, unmistakably special, very academic founders who leave the academy and want to start a company, but they're not at all commercial in their orientation, and they're not commercial in their speed. And they might think they are, by the way, but they're really not in the kind of the venture mindset. And by the way, many of them can become that, but the first few years is often not that, and many of them don't become commercial ever. And so what they really want is basically commercial credit for their academic work. And so they want to recreate a kind of academic workplace. And that's okay if you're a large company. It's not as okay if you're a startup. And I think that's a tough hunt. So a commercial orientation from a very technical expert in the field. And then number two, preferably some DNA that is also a high velocity engineering product DNA. Because I think the discipline of building a product that works, a discipline of building a product that works is different from the discipline of building a technology that scales, like a science that scales. And so the benefit of both is unmistakable. By the way, I don't necessarily look for a business DNA, but I look for a commercial instinct among the technology people. I invest usually first money. That's usually where you'll see me, is first money as an investor, very first investor. So I'll invest before there's a PowerPoint sometimes, and certainly before there's product market fit. And so very often. So it's the DNA that I'm looking for. And there doesn't have to be sort of a business person. Sometimes a full-time business person for these companies can be substantial overhead, frankly, at a stage like this. So it's best to make sure that there is at least a non-academic DNA to a non-purely academic DNA. And I do like the mix of technology and engineering together.
So speaking of that point, because I know at Chatbot Summit, earlier this year, you said from like a solution-based level, you're looking at companies specifically that are focusing on the UX, make good UX and focus on the personality versus more so the infrastructure components or developing tools for developers, essentially. Is that sort of your same focus at this point, or is that sort of broadening a little bit?
I think I might say it a little differently. I think here's what I was trying to get across, right?
Sure.
At the Chatbot Summit. So I don't think the valuable crop of startups right now, and I said this in, I think, September of last year, but I think it's largely true today as well. I don't think the valuable crop of next startups today are the ones that are making toolkits and SDKs for other chatbot companies, startup companies, because there's just not enough startup companies to create demand for you. But a lot of engineers who are stuck on a problem sort of think about the problem that they're stuck on and realize that if they only just had a better toolkit, they would have a better outcome for their company, and they mistake their own need for a true market need. It's not a terrible mistake, but it's a practical one that is very easy to make, especially in the early days of a new category. So in some number of years, SDKs and toolkits will be much more valuable, I think. But right now, I think they're less so. So by contrast, I was encouraging the audience at the Chatbot Summit, and I would encourage our audience today to think about certain kinds of companies which are either doing a thing very well, creating a very good experience somewhere very well, or for example, working on something like for example, personality, which I think is going to be very powerful in the field of chatbots, and very attractive and commercially very attractive. So any industry that begins with a deep set of people who are deeply technical has those advantages, and also the disadvantages of kind of not really being connected always as strongly to a commercial reality. And so that's what I was trying to highlight at that time.
Oh, gotcha. So I guess a segue from that and where we're sitting today, what annoys you about the current space of voice and chatbots? And maybe conversely, what is sort of keeping you inspired about things or behaviors that companies are doing?
Well, I think some of the things that are, annoying is annoyance is a stronger word that I might use, but I think I don't think we need to see another set of companies in customer service chats. It's enough, and they're not differentiable, and no doubt, so there will be a shaking out. No doubt, some will better than others, and so forth and so on. But I just we really want to be another company that's in the IPR. Like, so that's one. And another one would be, like, I don't think solving a technical problem for the sake of solving a technical problem is all that important. I don't think we need another company that's got like a POC with one bank. You know what I mean? I don't think we need more companies that are doing things in a customized, bespoke way. I think we need products, not service companies, basically. And we have plenty of smart people who could be doing either. And I think just the market's been over here. Now it's getting ready to be over here. So I encourage people to be over here. What inspires me is just I think an ineluctable fact, the inevitable fact that this is going to be real, and I just want to be part of that, the creation of that reality, and not responding to that reality. I think I'd love to benefit from it as a consumer, as a human, but I'd also love to help author it, and so that's inspiring. It's one of those rare technologies I think is going to change the world. And there'll be a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and you'll put it all together and it'll change the world. But I think it's very, very inspiring. I meet a lot of terrific people. I don't think we need another like robot that kind of does funky things on your desk and sort of talks to you in a weird way. I think we should solve actual problems that we actually have. So.
Agreed. So, you just speaking about being part of this whole sort of ecosystem, I know your company, Heroic Ventures, you had mentioned last time we were talking, you're working with Before AI. Why are they sort of a compelling solution? Like, what's your take on it?
Before.ai checks a lot of the boxes for me, and I'm very involved in that company, as you know, and I love it. You got former head of the dialogue team at Facebook, who's the CTO. You got one of the best chief engineers, chief architect types I've ever worked with. You got one of the best product people I've ever worked with. Another terrific scientist, and so forth and so on. It's a great, deeply technical team. It's very, very practical, very real. And they're wanting to tackle commerce. They're wanting to tackle voice-enabled commerce, commute commerce, multimodal commerce, chiefly starting with voice. And they're very sophisticated, they're very real, they're very practical, they're very high velocity. And we've chosen to start with, maybe I could say, with a pizza ordering tool, bot, and it works really darn well, and it gets better every week, notably. And we have third-party testing and in-person testing and all these things, and just the success rates go up and up. And I don't think anybody believes that pizza is going to change the planet, but it is a far more complicated dialogue that is both user and computer generated. So it's initiated. So it's real. It's a real dialogue, very natural, and they're pulling it off. They are pulling off an actual natural dialogue, and I'd much rather start with. So the CTO of the company has led the way in defining what is called high density AI, which is to define a domain narrowly enough that with a small data pool rather than an enormous data ocean, you can have extremely accurate dialogue flow. And with remarkable speed, he has been able to pull this off with a team, and all credit to them. So I'm very thrilled about it. And I'm very thrilled to find companies like them to be part of B4.ai. That's little b, number 4.ai. It's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen the demo. It sort of embodies like all the components of like models that exist now, but like to this higher level of complexity, because it's like, I could maybe try and replicate that in something like Dialogflow with intent entity model and context management and state management. But from a scalability perspective, it would just take a lot of time, So I'm imagining they're developing some in-house intellectual property to try and expedite some of those workflows, or?
I think so. I think that's right. I think it's rather extensible, actually. And I think these breakthroughs happen all the time, and they get better all the time. And so what people can see online is real. And I think the company's even published, even with my doing the demo, some false starts too. And so it's pretty open about how it works and doesn't. So I think it's quite thrilling, and it's a very collaborative and exciting breakthrough moment where we all feel like we're in a lab that also does something that is on the breakthrough on the brink of an enormous breakthrough. So look, I think you're right on the money, Chad, and to be sure, there are some other companies that are doing some fabulous things too. But we're still. By the way, to your point, there's still breakthroughs to be had by bringing together stuff that other people have done just a little bit better than anyone else has before. And that's how rich this opportunity is. There's so many ways to have a breakthrough. They don't all have to be sort of a stroke of genius. Though perhaps what I just described is a kind of a stroke of genius too. So anyway, that's all I've got on that.
So it's high density conversational AI. So I've been seeing a lot of stuff about, full duplex and high density. Are they sort of one and the same, or, is it sort of the same thing we're all talking about here that we're seeing from Microsoft and Google and, B4.ai, or are they sort of nuanced differences?
Wow. Well, I was pretty thrilled when I saw the duplex stuff. I'm sure you were too. That's a very special team. And by the way, so as far as I can tell, it's a team within Google that's not even their dialogue team, as far as I can tell from sort of the outside anyway. And I don't know more than headline level stuff or rumor level stuff. So let me not pretend to in this field. But everyone I understand in Israel who knows those guys thinks they're very smart and very capable. And I think there's certainly a certain lot of overlap between B4.ai's thinking and what appears to be the thinking that went into that very exciting, electrifying demonstration. So, look, I think we're all bullish, and we're all bullish because we see the ingredients. I don't think we've yet seen Nirvana.
Yeah.
But I think we see the ingredients that could help us get there. And there's no better time to be part of something than that.
No, absolutely. Are there any other companies in this space that you're working with right now that you can talk about, or?
I am affiliating myself with some other companies, but I'm reluctant to share the names just yet.
Sure.
For the sake of their privacy and other reasons. But I hope to be able to talk about that, soon. And certainly I'm on the lookout for terrific companies. I mean, all the time I'm eager to connect with terrific companies in the space. And I don't think it's necessarily a competitive time. I think it's a collaborative time and moment. I think it should be. I imagine not everyone feels that, but I do.
Cool. Can you maybe talk about some of the current obstacles or challenges in this space that you would like to see someone go out and solve, beyond, what B4.ai is working on? Are there other challenges that are just burning, and it's just someone needs to go set up a company and go solve this thing so we can sort of move this thing forward?
Yeah, look, I do think that personality presents a very exciting opportunity, and personality should be context relevant. I do think that also being able to enable commerce and have certain accounts get set up that are extensible across platforms would be really helpful. Being able to I've seen it come up a few times, and I'm not sure how real this is or how well articulated this problem is, but there's something about the kind of memory state with some of the major voice platforms that is not sort of perfect. So once you kind of leave, can you come back and pick up where you sort of session management, some version of that was solved 15 years ago in your browser basically, and it needs solving, I think, in voice. But look, here's what I would say. All of this pales in comparison to having one good natural conversation in your field of choice. Multi-turn. And so I'm on the hunt for really good multi-turn natural conversation companies. And if you solve that in any domain, I think you're already onto something like a human achievement, like a human level achievement.
Well, you sort of cut my next question, because I was going to ask you, have you used any bots since, the Tel Aviv spiel that you actually thought were really good? But I know I did see a post that you said the pizza bot is the best bot that currently exists. Are there any other?
Pizza bot's the best bot I've ever used. The pizza bot from B4 today is the best bot I've ever used. And I've ordered pizza with it. It's real pizza. I ate the pizza. Came to the office. I ate it. I know it's real because I ate it. And I ordered that thing with my voice. And the thing that I set out to order came, and it was that thing. And it was not a simple thing. It was like an actual thing. So, and it wasn't like a Q&A of 10 questions. It was a natural flow dialogue. I have not used anything else yet that comes close. And B4.ai is way the heck ahead. And by the way, I'm a very interested party in this. I'm very, I have a lot of shares, and I'm very invested and very interested, and it's very important to me commercially. So everyone who's seeing this should know that I feel that. But there's also a reason I'm so involved, is that I believe in it so much. So
Definitely.
Have you, Chad? Have you used one that you love?
No, I still have not used anything that I thought was really that good. I mean, I feel like if we're talking about voice user interfaces right now, I think they're solving some of the main stumbling blocks with voice, whether that's discoverability. I think some of the people on the Amazon team are rolling out new features that are making it a bit more intuitive. They are expanding sort of revenue opportunities as well, with Amazon and being micro purchases.
I agree with you. Yep.
I think we still don't have that bi-directional conversation yet, but for, I guess, compartmentalized solutions, there are some apps that seem decent, but I'm very much in your ball court. Nothing really else that I've seen other than what you guys had demoed, and maybe what Google Duplex and what Microsoft just released.
Duplex is cool, but I haven't used it.
Yeah.
That was cool. I saw the demo you did. That was cool.
So
think about how great, what a great position you're going to be in, collecting this audience and thinking about this thing for so long. When the breakthroughs do happen, Chad, you're just going to be in a great spot, because you're going to be able to really know all the things there are to know. And
yeah, no, I just love interviewing all these subject matter experts, because it's just like, I can only see like one piece of the pie, but then when I'm talking to all these people in this ecosystem, it's like, oh man, I had no idea this fits with this, and this fits in this value chain. So, sort of looking at the entire big picture, give us a slice of what Michael Fertik sort of imagines what this future, if all of these things come to fruition, what does that experience look like to you?
Well, ambient computing is I think the best way to say it. Computing is almost everywhere now with us because of our smartphones, and so much of our time is spent on our smartphones, for good and for ill. And our productivity is clearly enhanced. The extensibility of our productivity is clearly enhanced. You can be sitting in the back of an Uber or a Lyft or whatever and be very productive. You can pay your bills when you're at the beach. You can take a phone call from your closet. I don't know why you do that, but you could. And so, these are, but there's all kinds of societal issues that are associated with these things. Do we really want to be tethered the way we are? Different question, but to be sure, the value's there. The upside value is also there. And so, voice, multimodal, makes things both faster and more omnipresent. It makes things more ambient and also more rapid, more intuitive. And that killer match of the breakthroughs in voice, which then result in the breakthroughs of multimodal, are going to make computing that much more pervasive. And
oh, did I lose you? Uh-oh.
Office collaboration.
Okay, I got you back. You froze for a couple seconds, and I think we lost some audio, so you're back.
So, well, I say, it's possible that the first breakthroughs will be in commerce. It's possible that the first breakthroughs will also, among them, will be in the enterprise, in the business setting, and collaboration in the business setting. So I'm very excited about what is coming.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to order groceries from my car, or talk to an Excel spreadsheet, or string together. You're right. I think multimodal is the sort of next thing we need to get to, because that really ties together that whole ecosystem of, I'm talking to voice user interface here, I'm walking out my door, the IoT sensor knows that. Now I'm sort of continuing that on my phone and getting that sort of interoperability. But I think there's just going to be like these silos of, here's the Amazon ecosystem, here's Microsoft, here's Google, and then hopefully one day we get some interoperability across the entire spectrum. But I definitely see a brave new world, a very brave new world that's we're about to enter.
I think you're right.
Are there any like facts or insights that you've learned about voice or chatbots recently that just like totally surprised you or blew your mind? Whether it was like data that was, you had assumption one way and the data was saying completely this way.
Well, I think one of the things that I've been attracted to is how often we are unproductive as Americans. I think this idea of commute commerce is pretty powerful. This idea that we can make our top 40 / podcast, even though some podcasts are superb, time even more productive for ourselves in this lost 2 hours a day that the average American experiences. It's lost, I think that's a pretty powerful concept. I'm excited about the idea that we can radically improve that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Since you've been in the space now, for I don't know, a year, several months, in this time, have you seen like any like best practices either from like a development side of things or NLP or UX that you think is like really important that people should be aware of, that people need to put in?
I do think this tight collaboration, I think one of the things I think I've learned is this tight collaboration between the language people, conversation people, dialogue people, and who are computer scientists. They're sort of more academic scientists by general orientation so far, and your engineering / data scientist types is more important and more non-obvious than I had understood a year ago, let's say. And so I think I would be hard pressed to make another investment or become involved in the company that either wasn't already there or wasn't on the path to being there or didn't see a path to being there. That tight collaboration between technology and engineering. And so, and like, by the way, a lot of people think they can do both and really can't. I'm sure there are some people who can, but in any case, most people at the company, even if it's led or co-led by someone who can do both, most people at the company will not be able to do both. And so being able to tighten that collaboration, I think, is enormously empowering.
No, I think that's a really good point, because I think some of the roles for like team composition don't even currently exist, like they don't exist yet. So people are sort of trying to figure out, okay, so the UX designer that specializes in graphical user interfaces, now we need to have a linguist, or we need to have a psychologist to incorporate psychological mechanisms into the conversation flows. And I think that's sort of a sore spot that I see right now in this space, right? We have all the developers, and we have people that are sort of, natural language understanding experts, but there's not a lot, it seems like to me, where we're sort of trying to train the next generation of people that specialize in UX or copywriters for that matter. I've only talked to one person out of Amsterdam. They're creating a whole curriculum where they had copywriters and script writers, and they had psychologists, and to sort of train that next generation of copywriters. I don't know if you've maybe seen anything else.
No, I think that's a very good insight. It's not an insight that I had, but I think it sounds true that we need a generation of people who are in the ecosystem, who are not just engineers and scientists, but who are psychologically trained people, who are, to be sure, linguistically trained, we do that, but copywriting people. And so I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying.
Sweet. So for people getting into bots or voice or chatbots, do you have any like recommendations for people to follow other than yourself, of course, in the chatbot or voice space?
Well, I do think that working on a problem that's worth working on is very important. And I think also understanding that you cannot turn your consulting company into a product company. It just doesn't work. That you have to be one or the other. And there are terrific companies to be built in agency models and consulting businesses. I've never ever seen someone turn that consulting business into a scalable product venture backable type business. I don't think one is better than the other, but they are different beasts, and I've never seen the transition from one happens to the other. So if you're going to do it, choose your field, choose your approach, choose your weapons, and choose your focus, and then be very delighted with it. I don't think we need more of the same. I don't think we need another group of people who are going to tackle like the FAQ knowledge base of a gaming company. Like, I just don't think we need that, or a bank. I think there are enough of those guys and gals.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Cool. I absolutely agree with that sentiment. So, I'll give you the floor, tell people where they can see you maybe at the next conference, or where they should be following you online to hear about some of the cool stuff you guys are doing at Heroic Ventures or at B4.ai. Let the audience sort of get an idea.
That's very kind, Chad. So Heroic, we've invested in over 30 companies now, and we are at heroicvc.com. There's not a lot there yet, and there's also not a lot on Crunchbase about us yet, but there's more to us than you've seen so far, probably. B4.ai is exactly where you can find it. I am also on LinkedIn, and I am very interested in particular in meeting entrepreneurs who have not raised capital yet, who are interested in a first investment, especially ones in Silicon Valley and in Israel. That's where I focus, as you know. And I am hoping to have some appearances in this field in the second half of this year, and I hope to be able to announce them soon. I think I'm not supposed to yet, partly because they're probably not yet confirmed. And I also invite you to see a bit of Silicon Valley humor at femtofilm.com, FEMTOFILM.com, femtofilm.com. I think you might enjoy it.
Very entertaining series, I have to say, with that and with Bubble Proof that you did with TechCrunch, right?
TechCrunch and Bubble Proof.
Absolutely.
Bubble Proof is another series, yes.
Well, the last question I always ask all of our guests before we conclude, tell me like what keeps you motivated and inspired over all these years, over everything that you've done. Like, what is it for you that you wake up in the morning, you're like, I know what I'm going to do and I'm going to get it done, and we'll see what happens.
I think when it comes down to it, the number one thing that I am motivated to do is to learn. And look, like anybody else, I'm interested in making something. Like anybody else, I'm interested in selling something. I'm interested in having some financial reward, like anybody else. I don't deny that. I think that my true north is something about learning and making something new in a field that is new, and learning that field in a way that's new. And the autodidactic approach, even the autotelic approach of sort of doing it for the sake of doing it. I find myself most excited when I'm in those moments. And so, but look, I don't think there's any formula. And that's just probably mostly true. That's probably at least true about my experience.
Cool. I think everyone can sort of embody that, being in this space here and being motivated to create these voice and chatbots and all this cool technology that's emerging. Michael, I very much appreciate you being on the podcast today, and we'll definitely have you back soon.
I'm so glad, and thanks for doing it, Chad.
Cool. Hey, take care, Michael.
Bye.